Civil engineers.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and what a beautiful day it is. Very thankful for that. On behalf of the Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce, the City of Santa Maria, and local veteran organizations, welcome to the Freedom Monument Veterans Memorial. Each year, we take time to honor and remember our Santa Maria Valley veterans who gave the last full measure of devotion for our country. The wreath presentation ceremony later in the program will honor those 113 fallen veterans from the Santa Maria Valley. Today, we will also be dedicating the Cold War Veterans Plaque, honoring all veterans who served from 1946 to 1991, many of whom did not serve directly in Korea or Vietnam, but maintained our country's readiness during times of world tension with the Soviet Union and Soviet bloc countries. After the plaque dedication, there will be a fellowship luncheon inside the Youth Center, courtesy of Noontime Kiwanis, and everyone's invited for that. My name is Dave Cross, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies today. We welcome the people of our Santa Maria Valley community and surrounding areas who are here today, including representatives from Vandenberg Air Force Base. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 18th anniversary of the Freedom Monument Veterans Memorial. Originally built and dedicated in 2001 through the efforts of the Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce and the City of Santa Maria, it has been added to in one way or another every year since then. There are 113 Santa Maria Valley veterans listed here who gave the last full measure of devotion in conflicts from World War I to the present. It's a reminder of the great sacrifice paid by these veterans, their families, friends, and our entire community to preserve and protect the freedoms we have. Today, we will also pay special recognition to Cold War veterans. As mentioned, while those veterans may not have served directly in Korea or Vietnam, it was their perseverance and diligence that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. This period of history was characterized by world tension and measures just short of open warfare. Today, we add their recognition to the Freedom Monument Veterans Memorial, where all veterans are honored year after year. And, as I mentioned, we'll be unveiling the Cold War Veterans Plaque immediately after the ceremony within the Freedom Monument area. The support by the City of Santa Maria for our veterans is outstanding. Without the city's support of this Veterans Memorial area, it would not be possible. There's an established appreciation for our veterans that's greatly appreciated, and the Recreation and Parks Department in particular should be commended for their ongoing support and maintenance of the monument area. And as you can see, they provide full support for the annual ceremony. It's my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of Santa Maria, Alice Patino.
Thank you all for being here today on this beautiful day. Steve Lavignino and I were just saying how we usually sit up here and it gets so hot and our foreheads get sunburned and start peeling off in about a week. But it's always a gorgeous day and it's always so nice to see all of you here. I want to thank the Santa Maria Police Honor Guard for being here today. I want to thank George Majue for the Star Spangled Banner. We sort of have this joke going on between us. I always tell him I'll help him sing. Well, he found out that I didn't have a very good voice, but then this morning he said, "Hey, Alice, do you want to come up and sing with me?" And so I just wanted to let you know, I said, if you have the courage to do that, I have the courage to come up and sing. Well, we know he's not very courageous, but does use good judgment. So anyway, I always tell people I sing with Willie Nelson and Julio, and it's always in my car with the CDs going, and people really thought I was singing with Willie Nelson at one time. I want to thank all the distinguished guests that are here today, and very proud to thank all of our veterans and their families. I'm an Army brat. I was raised in the military, and so I have very deep appreciation for what our veterans have done and have gone through. And I know a lot of them don't think it's very significant, but I know, being a daughter of a veteran, how significant it is. My dad has 2 silver stars and a bronze star, and never wanted to talk about why or what. And even when we were younger, my sister and I would ask him, and he never wanted to talk about the war. And I know today what is called PTSD, and we know that my dad suffered from that, but at the time we just thought he was having nightmares. And so what all the families go through and what our veterans go through, whether it is visible, a visible scar or an invisible scar, it's there. And who've never confronted those things don't have that, maybe the feeling of what it is really like. And then when you talk about the Cold War, that was a little different because there weren't these significant battles that we saw or that our men and women had to go and fight. And I'd like to thank everyone whose life was affected by this, because all of the families were affected by this. My mother had 4 brothers that all went to war in the Second World War, and they all returned. One was not the Second World War, but the Korean War. My dad was in the Second World War and the Korean War. In fact, we were living in Yokohama, Japan in 1950, when we were shipped out in about a week's time to come stateside. When I see the Stars and Stripes, it makes me very, very proud. I instill this into my grandkids. I take them back, 2 of the boys back to D.C. to see our monuments, to see the things that are written on our monuments and how important it is that we protect these freedoms that we have. And they are very, very delicate freedoms, because there are men and women who have fought for those, and we have to continue the fight, even in our own ways. President John F. Kennedy once said, "A nation that reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors and the men it remembers." And that's also for women. And that's very important that we remember these people. Throughout our nation's history, America has been blessed with soldiers who were ready to risk all to defend a way of life. Our nation owes a great debt to its veterans, whose service to the country spans every decade, every year, every day of America's existence. We also thank the local residents who are in the military and who are stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base and who are currently deployed overseas in Europe, the Middle East, and all corners of the face of the earth. We thank the veterans in our community for their service and their sacrifices. We have recently observed Veterans Day. You may not know it was in the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The fighting of World War I ended in 1918. Due to the conclusion of the war to end all wars, November 11th became a universally recognized day of celebration. These men and women were ordinary people until they heard the call of duty and they answered it. They left their families, their homes, and their lives. They took time out of their lives to defend our country. It was not for recognition or fame or even honor to be bestowed upon them, but they fought to protect a country, to maintain the way of life that we have today. As we honor our veterans and remember their great deeds, let us also salute those who are currently fighting for our freedom. Born of their extraordinary accomplishments comes our extraordinary debt, and for those accomplishments and for their dedication, we here must always be grateful. The war on terrorism has helped us to realize how truly unique the American way of life is. The freedom we enjoy is extremely special, and that is why we must defend it. So now it's time not to only honor those who fought or are fighting for our freedom, but also take the time for each one of us to take part in protecting it. The defense of freedom is not just for those in the military. Each of us shares the duty and that responsibility. We don't have to join the Army, the Navy, or the Marines, or any other organization of defense to actively defend our way of life. We can protect our freedom here simply by maintaining it here in America. We want to preserve our freedoms, we must put them into action, for example, by voting in elections or speaking out against any injustices. We must also ensure that everyone feels the benefits of freedom. Last week, I was privileged to take about 20 kids. We went on a tour of the colleges. And one of the places the kids wanted to go was Berkeley. That was not my choice. In fact, I made it very clear. I hope none of you go to Berkeley. I hope I'm not offending anyone in the audience. And we went to San Jose State and Santa Clara. And on the campus of Berkeley was a young man in his fatigues. And I didn't get the chance to say thank you for what you do for our country, because I was back with some kids, but I could see him at a distance. But I thought, he has a lot of guts to be walking around the campus of Berkeley in an Army uniform. We can also do this by volunteering in our communities. I teach these kids that it's very important to give back to your community and what this means. And as I said before, we need to constantly do this with the youth in the community, because they're not seeing necessarily what it is to go to war, or maybe they don't have a brother or a cousin or a father or an uncle that is engaged in the military. And it's also important to respect and to support the high cost of veterans' benefits. It is not the cost that is so important, because they have put their life on the line. And we can't think of it as that. We have to support those, whether we give to different charities, Tunnels to Towers, Wounded Warriors. We have a veterans home here in Santa Maria that we support. I'm also want to help bring veterans, do people self-help housing to a veterans home here in Santa Maria. All these things that we need to do. If we can do it locally, if every city can participate in doing it locally and support their veterans, it is extremely important. Too long we have left them forgotten, and we need to continue to do this. Ceremonies are important, but the gratitude must be expressed more than just once or twice a year. So I say to all of you, thank you for what you do to keep our country safe.
Thank you, Mayor Patino. My apologies. Which leads right into our next speaker. Our next speaker continues to be a strong supporter of veterans, and 8 years ago, Supervisor Lavignino and his office staff spearheaded the first stand-down event at the Fair Park to help our local veterans in need. And since then, the event's grown beyond expectation, and this year's stand down at the Fair Park in October had over 600 registered volunteers and helped over 470 veterans with everything from clothes to food to haircuts, showers, even medical, dental, and legal assistance. So it's my pleasure to introduce Santa Barbara County's 5th District Supervisor, Steve Lavignino.
Thank you, Dave. And none of that would have been possible without Team Vandenberg, too. So I just want to make sure that they're recognized for all that they do at Stand Down. So today we gather to pay tribute to those who served during the Cold War. That's a term used to describe the decades of tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was labeled cold because neither side let the tensions boil over into declared state of war. But the label cold could also be used to describe the Department of Defense's handling of the men and women who risked their lives defending their country during this time. Throughout the years, at least 5 separate bills have passed through the House of Representatives recommending the creation of a Cold War medal, but each time the DoD has killed the proposal. Have we forgotten about the sacrifices made by our men and women as they stared down Armageddon and brought us through the other side, safer, stronger, and the undisputed superpower on the planet? While this country's bureaucrats spent another half-century figuring out how to honor you, let me say thank you to the missileer who spent endless hours buried 100 feet underground in a nuclear silo, whose only defense against boredom was the knowledge that if called upon to act, nothing short of a global catastrophe was imminent. Thank you to the B-52 pilots who flew endless 24-hour missions above the Arctic Circle, waiting for that order to attack Moscow, knowing if that order came, there would be nothing to come home to. Thank you to that intelligence officer who ventured deep behind the Iron Curtain to protect our interests no matter how dangerous the mission. Thank you to that submariner who played dangerous games of cat and mouse with our Soviet counterparts, thousands of feet deep in the Atlantic and all around the world. And most of all, thank you to my dad, who was stationed at the most forward early launch detection site on the frozen barren island of Adak, Alaska. Together, you served the nation well, keeping a very fragile peace from shattering into a nuclear holocaust. Your service has not been forgotten. Thank you.
The Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce provides the support and financial backing for the Freedom Monument. The Chamber truly steps up year after year. This year, the Chamber of Commerce paid for the Cold War Veterans Plaque and also repairs that had to be done to the monument area. I can tell you that anytime there's a need for the monument or to assist veterans in any way, the President and CEO of the Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce does not hesitate to help. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Morris.
Good morning again to everybody, and thank you for being here today. You know, Mayor, I'm with you on the sweaty forehead thing. I was telling Dave this is the 6th year that I've participated in this event, and I can't remember one time where we even were worried a little about the weather. We were talking about the date of this event. Usually Dave and Bob tried to schedule this right at or very close to the 7th in a recognition of the 7th of December. And so I kind of initially was expecting this to have been last Friday. And for whatever reason, they bumped it. And if you remember what the weather was like last Friday, my advice to you is if you're planning an outdoor event, call these guys, because they've apparently got a source that helps them figure that out. So, but again, thank you all for coming out this morning. You know, I'm asked often why the Chamber of Commerce is involved in veterans organizations and supports things like memorials. And I, you know, as I think about that, I think about the number of, the range of issues that our members are concerned about and that we're involved in on a regular basis. And there are very few of them, I'm not sure there are any, that don't have an intersection with veterans, right? So if we're thinking about workforce, needs in the community, well, these young men and women that are here, we hope a lot of them will choose when they're finished their service to stay in our community and go to work for our businesses, or even better, start a new business in our community and pursue their interests and passions, right? So if I think about quality of life in the community, I think about the volunteer hours that the veterans, continually put into our community. So again, I just go through the list of things that a Chamber of Commerce should be involved in, and in none of those do I find a disconnect with supporting our veterans and our active duty service members. So to us, it seems like a natural. And I think, going back many years to Bob's leadership and the members who have served on our board over the years and their commitment, this chamber is involved in a number of different ways. We're actively working with our friends out at Vandenberg on extending and expanding the impact that base and the service they provide means in our community. But on the flip side of that, we try to be very supportive of them, making sure that the quality of life that their airmen enjoy while they're stationed here is the best that it can be, and that they know that they have a friend and a partner in the community. I think of the work we do with Frank and his organization and trying to connect veterans to jobs in this community, and that's important as well. We recently have joined with the Santa Barbara Foundation, who's trying to organize a collaborative of all of the veterans organizations to increase the effectiveness and efficiency with which they serve the veterans community, and the Chamber is going to be involved in providing some fiscal support to that effort as well. And of course, all of that is really kind of tied up in the efforts of key volunteers, and Bob is our lead guy here, and really our point person for making sure that we're where we need to be and that we're aware of the issues that we need to be involved in. And so, all of those are important issues. And for me, it really comes down to this. The opportunities that we have as citizens to choose the way we want to live our lives, to choose the occupation that we use to support our families, to have the opportunity to take a risk and choose to start a business because that's our passion and our personal interest and not what some bureaucrat decided was needed next. All of those benefits were secured by the sacrifices of those who served in uniform. Our obligation then is to do two things, I think, really. Maybe three. I think our first obligation is to sustain those rights, right? And the mayor talked about voting and volunteering and the different ways that we can make sure that we don't give away those rights that they fought hard for. So that's first. The second, I think, is to live worthy of them, right, and to take full advantage of those opportunities. And the third, and perhaps the reason why we're here today, is occasionally I think it's important to just stop, pause for a moment, and say thank you. So on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, the employers in our community, thank you.
As Mr. Morris mentioned, our next speaker has worked tirelessly, not just to bring people together to help veterans, but to help them find employment. It's my pleasure to introduce the National Vice Chairman of the 40 and 8 Veterans Association, Frank Campo.
Well, good morning. I see a third-eye E-patch out there rocking the marm, my brother. So today we are here to honor veterans that served in the military from the end of World War II to the beginning of the Gulf War. The great British leader Winston Churchill commented in a speech at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri in 1946, from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Many service members have died in this new type of war. The Department of Defense has confirmed that there are over 126 American service members that are reported as missing or never recovered. These men were mostly air crews assigned to Air Force and Navy aircraft that were shot down by Russian, Korean, and Chinese missiles and aircraft. This does not include those service members killed or missing in training accidents. We also must remember the 126 submariners lost on the USS Thresher off of Cape Cod in 1963. And since this is Air Force country, let's not forget the Titan II missile disaster in Arkansas in 1980, when the liquid fuel leaked out of the missile and killed 1 airman and injured 21. And lastly, let's not think about the 364 soldiers returning from a peacekeeping assignment in the Sinai in 1985 that were killed when their airplane crashed in Gander, Newfoundland. The Cold War has also brought a new lexicon into our language. We learned about thermonuclear explosions, fallout shelters, civil defense wardens, intercontinental ballistic missiles. I see the sign right there, Checkpoint Charlie, DEFCON, duck and cover. For my Air Force folks, Thor, Corona, Agena. My Army brothers, the Nike Air Defense System. We also learned about détente, perestroika, and other words that we soon learned about. Also, let's not forget about those countries that we never heard about, like Afghanistan when Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1979. I personally recall growing up in the 60s and 70s, most communities had a civil defense siren that was used in the event of an attack. Now, this siren usually was tested once a month in our communities, and today it's usually used for tornado and other type of scenarios. I think it's Slow County with their sirens in the event of Diablo Canyon. Let's also not forget about, as youth growing up, practicing our duck and cover skills in elementary school. Or about that family that had a fallout bunker or fallout shelter in their backyard stocked with canned food that was guaranteed to last 100 years, and the clothes that were down there. From 1985 to 1988, I was a young soldier stationed in West Germany. When I received my initial orders to Germany or to Europe, I was excited. Small town kid from America, never left the country. I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to go to Germany. But I realized soon what my tour would be like. I was to depart on June 14, 1985. That was the same day that TWA Flight 847 was hijacked in Cairo. One U.S. Navy sailor was singled out and murdered by the terrorists. Unbeknownst to me, all flights that day to Europe were canceled. So I got to spend an extra day on leave. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union had a program to exchange military officers. In West Germany, it was called the Soviet Military Liaison Mission, or as we called it, SMELM. These exchange officers were prohibited from being near maneuver areas while U.S. troops were there or near convoys. We were instructed to report them when we saw them. It was quite common to see a Mercedes with a smell-o license plate cruise down the Autobahn snapping pictures of military vehicles. I was able to observe one of these vehicles and report it to a higher headquarters. When we went to the field for maneuvers, we covered up our bumpers so the Soviets wouldn't know what units were out there training. Or when we were in our containment or in our deployment areas, we picked up all the trash. We never left nothing behind because the Soviets would come in behind us and go through our garbage, everything. My job in Germany was that of a demolition sergeant assigned to a Corps Combat Engineer Battalion. Our battalion supported the German 12th Panzer Division with responsibility of slowing down the Soviet invasion forces while they blitzkrieg through the Fulda Gap. One of my responsibilities was to periodically check demolition tunnels placed at strategic points on tunnels, bridges, and sides of hills. This was to prohibit the use of these avenues of approach. These demolition tunnels were enormous in size. They were about the size of a manhole cover and about 6 inches thick. We would lower these charges down, and if the word came, we would blow them. In addition to that, we trained with nuclear weapons. We learned how to implement the backpack carrying atomic demolition munition. Although I enjoyed my time in Germany, the beer and the brats were good, I did not enjoy my time away from my family. While in Germany my 3 years, I averaged about 200 days a year deployed along the East German and Czech border. I recall, as I am in the 1K zone, of the fence that separated East Germany from West Germany and the Czech Republic from West Germany, of the fence. The fence was a cyclone fence about 12 feet tall, and it was topped with barbed wire. Now, most places, if you want to keep people out, the barbed wire is angled to keep them out. Well, along the border, it was angled back in. That was to keep the East German and Czech people from scaling the fences. In closing, as the wind blows, in closing, I consider the Cold War America's longest and forgotten war, and I would like to leave you with this comment, and it's going to make Steve's dad very sad. I just want to say, go Army, be Navy.
Well, our next speaker is the commander of the Santa Maria Veteran Honor Guard. This distinguished volunteer group provides ceremonial services at funerals of veterans who have passed away. He's been the past commander of the local VFW and American Legion associations, and he has for many years been master of ceremonies at the Santa Maria Cemetery for Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Stadnick, Jr.
First comment, 1 February 1985 was the day I retired from 24 years of active duty. So as I was ending my service, Frank was starting his service. Thank you for the invitation to participate in today's service, honoring our veterans, especially those that served our brotherhood, our sisterhood of service to our country. Thank you, Bob Hatch and Dave Cross, for inviting me to participate in today's service. Today I want to use this opportunity to recognize a group of men and women whom I've been honored to serve with for over 25 years. They are men and women who volunteer to honor our country, our community, and our veterans as they transfer to what we call post-everlasting. Over these years, there has been only 30 plus who have answered this call to serve our community, with over 2,300 call-out services, color guard, honor guards. As you look at the flyer in today's program that was in the newspaper and other, you'll see a picture of one of those members of this group, Lieutenant Colonel Carl Holmquist, United States Air Force, who transferred to Post Everlasting in September. He was my right-hand man, always available when needed. There are so many to be recognized. I kept a list of those who have served and those I can call on to continue this service to our community. But I will only mention a few. Always there when needed, nobly they became my right-hand man. Quartermaster Russ Abel, VFW, Fred Big Red Booman, both transferring to Post Everlasting in the last 2 years. Some of the members that have served many years since I established this unit, but no longer are physically able to participate. Ralph Guerrero, Francis Maciel, Tom Knott, and Mervyn Thomas. What distinguishes all of these men, they are all in their mid-90s and served, most of them, till they reach 90. Today is our group's the 115th Service Color Guard for the 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, on the right are the members of the Santa Maria Valley Veterans Honor Guard. And I am proud to be the commander of the Santa Maria Valley Honor Guard, and we are honored to have the opportunity to serve our community, serve our veterans, and let the families know that veterans care. That's what we do. Veterans care. I thank you.
Vandenberg Air Force Base has been a long-standing partner of the community. So the hundreds of military men and women, some of whom are here today, who serve and protect and defend our nation, and home to their families as well. The base has historically played an important role in our country's defense and readiness, and that continues today. Please welcome the commander of the 30th Space Wing and Western Launch and Test Range at Vandenberg Air Force Base, Colonel Anthony Massouir.
Wow, what a wonderful day. When Bob asked me if I'd come out and join you all, I said I couldn't be more pleased to be included with this group here in front of us today to talk about what it is that we're here to talk about, which I found to be absolutely extraordinary. The idea that we are going to recognize Cold War veterans. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you for all those who dedicated time and energy to making that a reality here today. I agree, it has been too long. It has gone on too long that we don't properly recognize those that have served during this period in our country's history. I'm also very, very pleased that I'm joined with so many outstanding airmen from Vandenberg Air Force Base. Not only do we all get to get out of the marine layer that is currently socked in up on the hill and come down and enjoy the sunshine that you all take for granted just about every day except last Friday apparently. But it's an opportunity for us as airmen, the active duty, to sit side by side with the veterans. And this is really important. It's important because I'd say to the veterans, they are your legacy. They are carrying on. They are serving because they believe the same things that you believed when you served. They know that freedom isn't free. And it takes men and women willing to stand up and sacrifice, if necessary, everything to keep our nation free. And I'd say to the airmen, these veterans, they've plowed the way for you. They have shaped and they've left fingerprints on the service that you are part of. I'd encourage you, as we spend some time together this afternoon, that you spend some time with them and ask them some of their stories. have them pass along some of the things that they learned, that they experienced, and carry that forward. It's really, really important. Mayor, it's great to see you 2 days in a row. It's a privilege to be here. Supervisor Lavignino, thank you very much. Mr. Morris, again, thank you for all that the Chamber has done. To our veterans organizations, I couldn't be more thrilled to share the podium with you. Thank you for this opportunity. I always kind of smile when I hear that Vandenberg is a partner with the community. And I don't take objection to that. But really, Vandenberg is part of the community. And the community is part of Vandenberg. And I say that because our airmen live here. Our airmen, some of them have part-time jobs here. Their spouses work here. They dine here. They reside, they rent houses, they own houses here. Our airmen and the airmen of Vandenberg Air Force Base and the civilians and the contractors that support that mission, they are part of this community in every bit as anybody else. So I'm glad to be your partner, but I'm also proud that we're part of the community and that we got to share this today. So Bob asked me to talk a little bit about Vandenberg's role in the Cold War. And, you know, as was commented, it's been said that the Cold War started in September of 1945 at the close of the Second World War, which began 46 years of both overt and clandestine activities by countless men and women to defend the American way of life against the spread of communism around the globe. So, if we take a quick glimpse into Vandenberg's role, you see that you have a community that worked, brave men and women that fought and ultimately won that war. The Soviet detonation of the atomic bomb in 1949 sent a clear message to our nation's leaders that the United States had to develop and field not just a more powerful weapon, but a way to deliver its effects anywhere on the face of the earth. Many years of effort followed to develop just such a capability. And General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, the Air Force's second Chief of Staff, was actually the individual who approved the plan to accelerate the procurement of an intercontinental ballistic missile system. General Vandenberg's experiences in World War II were such that he was not so dogmatic about how air power should be employed. But he did believe strongly that there was a way to combine the ability and lethality of precision weapons without unnecessarily putting men and women in harm's way. His approval of the ICBM program led to the establishment of the Western Development Division, a precursor to the 30th Space Wing. And Major General Bernard Schriever took command. His first assignment was to identify a location for this command. After looking at 200 different locations, he settled on this site, right over there, inactive since World War II and the Korean War Army Training Base, then known as Camp Cook. So we reactivated Camp Cook as Cook Air Force Base and later renamed it Vandenberg Air Force Base in 1957 in honor of the late General Vandenberg, who actually passed away just 3 weeks after approving the plan that set our nation on the path to strategic missile dominance. It's amazing. Within a year at Vandenberg, we had our very first medium-range ballistic missile launch, the Thor, in 1958. In fact, it was December 16th, 1958, so we'll celebrate the 61st anniversary of that launch on Monday. Shortly thereafter, Vandenberg became the first base in the United States with the capability to launch a nuclear-armed Atlas intercontinental ballistic missile, and we successfully maintained those missiles on 24-hour alert status. Very first one anywhere in the country, right here in the Central Coast. The ensuing years involved the development and perfection of a multitude of weapons. You've heard many of them named already: the Titan I, the Titan II, the Beaumark, the Minuteman, and the Peacekeeper, all with the sole intent of providing a nuclear strike against any target anywhere in the earth. So eventually those in power, in positions of influence in our nation's capital, needed to find a way to collect intelligence. So they again turned to Vandenberg, because sitting here on the California coast, we have the ability to launch due south and place a satellite into orbit. And in fact, we did so, working to place the very first reconnaissance satellite into such a polar orbit. It was at Vandenberg Air Force Base in 1960 that we launched the Discoverer 13, the very first photo reconnaissance satellite to orbit the planet, collect photos, and have them safely delivered to any point we chose. We went on to develop other programs, such as the Gambit and the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, so we could understand where the weather was, what the weather was doing anywhere on the face of the earth. We didn't need it for Santa Maria because it's always sunny here, but not everybody enjoys this weather. DMSP went on to provide weather data not just for the military, but for the nation as a whole. And in fact, it still does so today as part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. Now let me fast forward to present day. 9 months ago, the United States formally suspended the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, and the President tasked the Department of Defense to develop a prototype intermediate range ballistic missile. That was just 9 months ago. We worked hard over the past 9 months because this would be a demonstration to the world, and specifically to any potential adversary, that the U.S. is ready and able to respond. Yesterday, I'm proud to say that at 08:30 in the morning, the men and women of Vandenberg Air Force Base successfully launched the United States' first IRBM right here from the Central Coast. First one in more than 30 years. As Vandenberg Air Force Base looks to the future, we need to remember the past because it gives us our inspiration. While we were protecting our nation's missile and rocket technology, the people of the Santa Maria Valley were with us every step of the way. The members of this community were there to provide homes, to provide the entertainment, the restaurants, to provide the educational opportunities, to provide the community away from the base that our airmen needed during that time. And they continue to do so today. The capabilities developed at Vandenberg have always been at the forefront of innovation and design. They've always provided our national leadership with the ability to confront international aggressors without fail. These men and women fought countless battles during this long war. They used more than just bullets and bombs. Their weapon was innovation, and their ammunition was information. And through it all, like the veterans here before them, they displayed dedication. Dedication to upholding American ideals and ensuring the safety of our allies. Let us always remember their sacrifice and their duty, and have them serve as inspirations for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Mastour. It's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, who I've had the pleasure of working with for the last 18 years on the Freedom Monument project. And when I say working, I mean literally rolling up our sleeves and getting in there and designing and installing these plaques. And it was a bit of a learning curve the first few years, but I think after 18 years, we finally figured it out and got them in right. He's the chairman of the Chamber's Military Affairs Committee, the honorary commander of the 30th Space Wing, and a highly decorated Vietnam veteran. While on active duty in the United States Army, Robert Hatch distinguished himself in Vietnam, winning numerous decorations for valor, including the Silver Star, Bronze Star with V, signifying valor, the Air Medal, Purple Heart 3 times, Army Commendation Medal, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, Vietnam Campaign and Service Medals, and the coveted Combat Infantryman's Badge. He's a life member of a number of local veteran groups. So ladies and gentlemen, Bob Hatch.
Wow, what a great introduction. Thank you, Dave, very much. Having learned many lessons over the years, it's either a blessing or a curse to be the last speaker. But one thing I did anticipate today, and I'm glad I did it, many of the speakers today spoke great volumes about the Cold War. And so I'm going to limit my remarks to that. Understand that now you've had a history lesson about Vandenberg Air Force Base, the community support, and the presence of all of you here today. So it's a great pleasure to be here again today, and I assume, again, the historical perspective would be covered adequately enough about the Cold War, and I'm glad I did that lest I bore you. Now, we're going to have a wreath-ceremony after that, so the only thing standing between you and lunch is me. So it's going to be brief, believe me, and it is important, of course, to give, you're welcome. It is, of course, important to give meaning to the selection of the Cold War to be recognized. And like so many other aspects of previous events, Dave Cross played an important role in our choice. This time, however, his role was rather indirect. Dave and I, as he mentioned, founded the Freedom Monument, which seems in some ways like a long time ago, and in other ways just like yesterday. Most of the time for local veterans events, Dave and I attend together. We sit together, and I noticed at one in the relatively recent past that the announcement was made for each member of World War II, living members of World War II to stand, veterans of the Korean War to stand, members of Korea, and so forth. And it dawned on me that Dave would never stand, as he was not a participant in any of the above-mentioned armed conflicts. Even though he was a veteran, he was never acknowledged. Like hundreds of thousands of others, known as the Cold Warriors, their service was only relegated to history. Their acts of patriotism and bravery in every corner of the world, standing guard against communism, were left mostly to personal scrapbooks, to be sure, unrecognized. The Santa Maria Times did a wonderful series recently which included some of our Cold Warriors. So having reviewed the program, there is no more appropriate time than now to honor Dave as a representative of so many who were prepared to face aggression should it present itself. They stood alert in the missile silos in the high plains of America. Right over the hill, as Colonel Mastolier mentioned, at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and as Frank Campbell mentioned, in such places as the Fulda Gap in Germany. I served with the 1st of the 54th Mechanized Infantry in that very area. Our general would often come out and point to the Fulda Gap and said, "Hang on, boys, this is where it's coming from, right down the Fulda Gap." Of course, that had long been known in the history of whatever battles would be fought, that that's where it would come from. The Korean border also caused a great deal of tension, so we had our Cold Warriors stationed in that area. So Dave, come on up here for a minute, and I'd like to ask Steve Lavignino to come up as well, since he mentioned this early in his comments, that the United States of America has not seen fit to honor the Cold Warriors. We honor everything else. We honor all kinds of things, and medals and ribbons are given out for that. And to be sure, it is a great pleasure to have many of those medals myself, as Dave mentioned. I'm proud of that, but I often felt there was a gap. So what I have today is something for Dave, and it is a commemoration of the service that he provided during the Cold War. And I want him and the rest of the Cold Warriors never to forget that we appreciate your service. We appreciate what you did for us, and a lot of you continue to do to this day. So, if I can get the tape off of my fingers. I'd like to present a Cold War Victory Commemorative Service Medal to Mr. Dave Cross for his conspicuous performance of duty representing exemplary patriotism in the finest traditions of the United States Air Force, and respect great credit upon himself and his military service. This says that between September 7, 1945 and 26 December 1991, they are recognized by the Cold War Victory Commemorative Service Medal. If the country isn't going to do something for our Cold War veterans, by God, we're going to. So this is for you, Dave. I'll finish up by saying, and we'll put a little sharper point on the Cold War and its impact. And it's important to understand that the world could be and still is dangerous, if not more so today than it was during the Cold War. The enemy has become less defined, with smaller countries obtaining nuclear weapons, and more radical ones would seem to be more of a threat than the Soviet Union ever was. Americans have been affected by global terrorism even within our own borders. To be sure, the world has changed in a manner of ways since 1945, when the Cold War began, and certainly since 1991, when it ended. However, certain things remain true, especially in the conduct of our foreign affairs. The development of satellites and intercontinental nuclear missiles has shrunk the size of the planet. The Soviet Union and the United States understood whichever side launched the first nuclear weapon, total destruction of the world as we knew it would quickly follow. Nevertheless, both nations indulged in indirect conflicts and proxy wars by supporting allied nations in such places as Vietnam and Korea. One only need look at Southwest Asia to see the chessboard has simply been withdrawn today. In the end, however, the United States remains the sole superpower in the world. The lessons learned during the Cold War, the development of superior, sophisticated weapons, the ability to infiltrate and spy, the inherent distrust of our adversaries, and the fighting spirit of the American soldier will hopefully make our enemies remember that we will never, never capitulate. I hope that the significant gesture today that we make by dedication of this plaque will help those who fought the Cold War understand that our nation is grateful beyond words. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I cannot express enough my appreciation for that, but I want you to know that I'm accepting that on behalf of all Cold War veterans. So I want to ask something that you very rarely hear at a ceremony, and that is, if there are Cold War veterans in the audience, please stand and be recognized. At this time, I'd like to ask all of those who will be presenting wreaths to line up over by their wreath, which is in that area right over there. As part of our annual program, and in honor and reverence towards those who gave their lives and are listed at the Freedom Monument, we include a wreath presentation ceremony where local organizations present a wreath in honor of the fallen. Each of the wreaths will be placed in the flagpole area of the monument. So as I call out the organizations and presenters, please present your wreath. The first is the City of Santa Maria. And that's Mayor Alice Patino and City Councilman Mike Cordero. Next, we have the County of Santa Barbara, 5th District. Supervisor Steve Lavignino will be the presenter. Santa Maria VFW 2521 and Santa Maria VFW Auxiliary 2521, Michael Stadnick Jr. and Chris Rodriguez, presenters. Next we have American Legion Post 56, Santa Maria, American Legion Auxiliary Unit 56, and Sons of American Legion Post 56, presented by Richard Noriega, who's the commander of Post 56, and Loretta Marsh. Next, we have the Santa Maria Valley Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Glenn Morris. We have the Santa Maria Valley Historical Society, presented by Jim Zamitis. We have Santa Maria Eagle 1745, presented by Floyd Lovato and Angel Solis. We have Santa Maria Moose Lodge 719, presented by Jim and Millie Gregory. This wreath ceremony is in honor and remembrance of the 113 Santa Maria Valley veterans that are listed in the Freedom Monument who gave their last full measure of devotion from World War I to the present. I'd like to remind everyone to please gather in the monument area after the ceremony for the unveiling of the Cold War Veterans Plaque. And then please stay for a fellowship luncheon inside the Youth Center. Special thanks to Noontime Kiwanis for cooking and serving lunch. Before we close, I want to thank all the people and organizations who have made this event possible. Thank you to the City of Santa Maria, Chamber of Commerce, and staff, today's presenters, local veteran groups, and to the Recreation and Parks Department for setting up and providing the chairs, equipment, and support for today's ceremony. So thank you, all of you.